Hey guys, for today's video I will cover Sunday's kit and everything else you need to reach his full potential. I'll cover what relics and ornaments to use, what cones to use, and what teams. Starting off with this kit, his ultimate regenerates energy by 20% of his target's max energy for one designated ally character and turns the ally and their summon into the beatified. It increases their crit damage by an amount equal to 30% of Sunday's crit damage plus 12% more. At the start of Sunday's every turn, the duration of the beatified status decreases by 1 turn, which lasts for a total of 3 turns, and it only takes effect on the most recent target of the ultimate, excluding Sunday himself. When Sunday is knocked down, the beatified status will also be dispelled. For his skill, it advances forward an ally and their memo sprite by 100% and increases their damage dealt by 30% and by an additional 50% if the target has a memo sprite. After he uses his skill on the beatified, he recovers 1 skill point. Keep in mind that when Sunday uses this ability on characters following the path of the harmony, he cannot advance them forward. For his talent, it increases the crit rate of his skills' target by 20%, lasting for 3 turns. For his first trace, it states that when using his ultimate, if the energy regenerated for the target is less than 40, then it increases the regenerated energy to 40. For his second trace, it states that Sunday regenerates 25 energy when the battle starts. For his third trace, it states that his skill dispels 1 debuff from his skills' target. For his relics, you're going to want to reach 4000 to 4500 HP, 1000 to 1200 defense, 180 to 220% crit damage, 124% energy recharge, 134 speed, or just -1 speed slower than your hyper carry, or 160% speed for a hyperspeed playstyle. For his -1 speed playstyle, you're going to want the Sacerdos Relieved Ordeal set because it increases his speed by 6% and it increases his hyper carry target's crit damage by 36%. For an alternative, a mix and match 2-piece bonus set between any relic that provides speed as its 2-piece bonus would be good because it allows him to hit the 134 speed breakpoint. For another alternative, the Messenger Traversing Hyperspace set is going to be good because it provides the same amount of speed increase for his 2-set bonus, and it increases all allies' speed by 12% when he uses an ultimate on an ally, which will help most of your team have 1 more turn if you can consistently use Sunday's ults every cycle and if all your team members have at least 134 speed. Keep in mind that if you're running this set with a -1 speed Sunday, this might ruin your speed tuning between Sunday and his hyper carry, so take caution. For a hyperspeed playstyle, the Eagle of Twilight set will be his best since it advances him forward by 25% whenever he uses his ultimate, which allows him to take multiple turns throughout cycles so that he can use his skill point neutral skill and his ultimate more frequently. For his planner sets, the Lushaka Planner Spear will be his best -1 speed set because it gives him energy recharge and gives his hyper carry 12% attack. For a hyperspeed playstyle, the Sprightly set will be his best since it also gives him 5% energy recharge and it advances him forward at the start of the battle by 40%, further giving him more turns and allowing for him to use his ults and skill on the main DPS from the very start of battle. For his chest, he's gonna want crit damage. For his feet, he's gonna want speed. For his planner sphere, he's gonna want HP percentage or defense percentage. And for his rope, he wants energy recharge. For his substats, he's gonna want speed until his desired breakpoints, that being either 134 or 160 plus, then crit damage, then effect resistance, then HP or defense percentage. For his Lightcones, Sunday's signature Lightcone is going to be his best since it gives him even more energy, increases the damage dealt for his carry, and gives him 1 more skill point after every 2 instances of his skill or ultimate, making him skill point positive. For an alternative, Bronius' Lightcone would be good because it also provides energy for Sunday and damage dealt for the carry. For a 4-star alternative, the Past and Strong Lightcone is also decent because it increases the damage dealt of the carry by 32% for 1 turn. For Hyperspeed Sunday, a good alternative would be the Dance 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 Lightcone because it advances him forward by 24% when he uses his ultimate. For his teams, Sunday works with practically everyone who scales off of crit stats, including every meta character, even Castris, although he isn't as good with her as other supports like RMC since his ultimate buffs don't stay on her summon when it revives. Regardless, his best supports will include characters with summons, except Castris, because they can make use of his additional 50% damage boosts like Aglaia and Jinjuan, follow-up characters like Fei Chao Chao because his buffs are practically permanent, allowing for follow-ups to be efficient whenever, and energy-hungry characters like Aglaya and the Herda because his ultimate provides a minimum of 40 energy and a maximum of 20% of his target's energy. Aglaya is by far Sundays' best synergy since she benefits extremely from everything in Sundays' kit to the point of being dependent on it for meta status. Sunday can provide her with 50% additional damage if the target has a summon, energy recharge up to 20% of the target's max energy and minimum 40 energy, character and summon advance forward, along with a ton of hypercarry buffs that let Aglaya become a meta character. Jinjuan is also a good synergy with Sunday for practically the same reasons. Sunday provides 50% additional damage, advances Thunderlord forward alongside Jinju Wang, and provides him with energy so that Jinju Wang can use his ultimate and provide his Thunderlord with more stacks. Fei Chao is also a really good teammate with Sunday since Sunday can provide Fei Chao with near permanent buffs to her, which allow for her follow-up attacks to also have near permanent buffs. The only downside to this energy is that Fei Chao doesn't get an additional 50% damage boost, nor can she benefit off of the energy provided through Sunday's ultimate, with Robin being a better support for her. Regardless, Sunday remains an extremely good hypercarry alternative to Robin because of his advance forward, decent damage stealth buffs, and crit buffs. The Herda is also an amazing teammate for Sunday since although she doesn't get an additional 50% damage bonus, Sunday provides the Herda with crit stats, damage stealth, advance forward, and her most needed resource, energy. For his Eidolons, his E1 states that when Sunday uses his skill, the target character can ignore 16% of the target's defense, and their summon can ignore 40% of the target's defense, lasting for 2 turns, which is an insane damage boost to his hypercarry, even if there aren't other supports on the team that can also provide defense shred, and if there are, this E1 is most definitely worth your investment. For his E2, it states that after the first use of his ultimate, he recovers 2 skill points, and that the damage dealt by the Beatified increases by 30%, which is only decent since the skill points at the beginning of battle practically aren't that insane, and the damage dealt buff has diminishing returns, considering that he already gives 30% damage dealt and 50% additional damage dealt if the hypercarry has a summon. For his E4, it states that he regenerates 8 energy at the start of every turn, which is pretty good for his energy regeneration, and is a decent bonus if you're already going for his E6, but if you already have his signature or Bronius' signature, all this Eidolon does is guarantee you a permanent ultimate uptime, even though chances are you are already going to have that permanent ultimate uptime. For his E6, it states that the talent's crit rate boost becomes stackable up to 3 times, and the talent's duration increases by 1 turn, and that when Sunday uses his ultimate, it can also apply the talent's crit rate boost effect to the target. It also states that when the talent's crit rate boost takes effect and the target's crit rate exceeds 100%, every 1% of excess crit rate increases crit damage by 2%, which is actually insane even for a C6, since it provides his hypercarry with an extra 40% crit rate, and if this crit rate ever goes above 100%, it gets converted into crit damage at a 1:2 ratio, which is the same ratio that optimal crit stats follow, meaning that if your hypercarry does end up having excess crit rate for whatever reason, it doesn't matter because you're gonna get the equivalent amounts of value converted into crit damage from that excess crit rate. In conclusion, his E1 is actually busted, considering that as a hypercarry support, he'll typically be paired up with support DPS characters like Silverwolf, who can provide the hypercarry with even more defense shred, making the defense shred have accelerated returns. His E2 is pretty meh, since it only kinda makes him skill point positive, but it's a bit excessive since it gives the carry even more damage dealt, which will only be diluted even more since he already provides a ton of damage dealt. For his E4 is decent since it does provide Sunday the small amount of energy recharge to make his ultimate permanent, but this energy recharge could easily be obtained from other sources like his Lightcone that don't require as much investment. But his E6 is an insane crit rate and potentially crit damage boost as well that is far better than any other support unit's C6. Regardless, I would only advise going for his E1 and going for his E6 if you have an extraneous amount of money that you can spend on the game to better your account. For his playstyles, Sunday is going to have 2 playstyles, -1 speed and hyperspeed, with the former being his typical better playstyle. -1 speed is where Sunday has 1 less speed than his hypercarry, which lets him prioritize crit damage for his substats and lets the hypercarry ramp up and then instantly be advanced forward and do the ramped up attack, this time with Sunday's buffs. Hyperspeed Sunday is all about allowing Sunday to take as many actions as possible, and thus your your hyper carry to take as many actions as possible as well. With this playstyle, Sunday will offer less crit damage stats for his hyper carry, considering that his build substats are going to be filled with speed. On the other hand, his hyper carry won't have to worry about speed as much, which will allow them to utilize attack percentage or HP percentage feats depending on what stat they scale off of. In conclusion, -1 speed Sunday is typically better since a hyperspeed playstyle is usually used to maintain permanent ultimate uptime, which Sunday can practically already do with ease.